Dad served him a pound of steak, potatoes, cup of coffee, and bread and butter for water.
Yes. Well, that was a pretty good meal.
A pound of steak. It's a pretty good meal.
Yes.
You working for some company?
We're working with the Oklahoma Historical Society.
Oh.
And, you know, we're trying to save history orally, you know. And well, I think it's interesting because we've got your voice on tape, and you're going to tell us the truth. You're not going to give us any bad.
Well, we want to start out.
Yeah, this is September 12th, 1984.
Later than that. It's 6th, man.
Yeah, September 12th.
Huh?
Isn't it the 12th?
Tell me right there on that door right there.
Yeah, 12th. This is Joe Todd and Berenice Jackson, and we are interviewing Mr. Albert Cammerer. Okay. Okay. Sir, where were you born?
I was born in Denver, Colorado.
When's your birthday?
April the 23rd, 1884. 1888. I get it right after a while.
Who is your father?
Father?
Yeah?
His the same name as mine. Albert W. Cammerer.
Where was he from?
He's from Epidemic, Woodward, Germany.
When did he come to this country?
Well, he was born in 1864, if I remember right. So when he was 17 years old, he left that country. So you'll have to do that figuring out yourself.
Why did he leave Germany?
Well, them years, when you got 17 years old, you had to serve in the army. And you didn't get no pay, and you had to serve 3 years. And he said he wasn't going to stay there and serve no 3 years. So him and his brother packed up and come over to the United States. He had one brother older than him that was over here.
Oh, well, that made it nice for him when he got here.
Did he talk about the trip?
Yeah. I don't know much about the trip. I think he said he was 17 days on the water.
Mm-hmm. Did he go through Ellis Island?
When he left there.
Where did he land when he got
He landed in New York.
in New York?
Did he talk about Ellis Island?
Huh?
Did he ever talk about Ellis Island coming through there with all the immigrants?
No, I never did hear him say much about it.
Mm-hmm.
That part of in there.
Who was your mother?
Huh?
Who was your mother?
Mother?
Yeah?
Well, my mother's name was Sophie Westrup. Her folks come from Germany too.
Where did they meet?
They met in Cincinnati.
When they come to Oklahoma?
We come to Oklahoma and Dad left there. I just don't remember the date. Tell you something about it in a minute or two or an hour. I don't know whether it's on there or not.
Your father and his friend They left Denver in a wagon?
That's in a spring wagon. He made a tin stove to put in that spring wagon, and down there they come. They landed here Christmas Eve after the strip was open, 93. Tells you all there. My daughter, he wrote everything down in a book. And my daughter at Palm City got a hold of it. I thought I'd lost it. So she got a hold of it and took some maps and traced it all down there. And I think she got it all marked there from the start to the finish till he got here.
Do you remember the trip from Denver down here?
I come down on a train.
You did? Do you remember much about Denver?
Huh?
Do you remember Denver?
Not very much. Little of it. I remember getting in the flood up there.
In a flood? When was that?
Tell us about it.
Well, I was a little kid. I don't know, I was 4 or 5. I wasn't, Well, I was 3 or 4 years old. And that winter they had an awful snow up there. And had a lot of water up the mountains. They're dam. They got the water out of the mountains for Denver. And they were afraid that it was going to overflow and bust up things. So they went down in the river, more down towards the river bottoms, and cut holes in their water mains to drain the water out. So we was living, we had our house a little on the hill like, but down in the bottom there, why, it gone down in the river bottom, why, it was all underflowed. So we had to get out of there. So we went up to a little old town in Denver called Leary. And her sister lived there. And he worked in the packing company there. So after the flood was out, well, we come back down home then.
What part of Denver did you live in?
That's another question that I don't know nothing about. What part? Well, I had a map and they traced that down and marked it down where you traced it to.
Do you remember the trip down to Oklahoma on the train?
Well, not too much. I didn't pay too much to it. But, I remember coming down here, and they had just moved. The depot used to sit right down here on 1st Street.
Here in Woodward?
Yeah. And they had just moved it up on 5th Street when we come here.
How big was Woodward when you...
March. Wasn't very big. Of course, you covered a lot of territory, but it wasn't very big.
Yeah. What did Main Street look like?
Well, Main Street, it looks about like any other little bit old dinky town. There's a house here and a house there and a house here. On 1st Street, there on Main Street, there wasn't much up through there. On a fellow named Dean, Judge Dean had the property on the corner of 1st Street in Maine. Right down here. He had a whole block there. He had a barn, built him a barn, and finally built a 2-story house. And the next block is, there was 2 frame houses and an adobe house in there. We moved in the frame house. There's a frame house there, and we moved into it. And we was in there, I should judge maybe 6 months, maybe not that long. A fellow that was living in an adobe house, a fellow named Reynolds was his name. And he filed on some land down in Turkey Creek. So when he moved out, we moved in his house. And he had picked up a calf down in Mexico and raised it. He had a milk cow. And she was a real one too, I'll tell you that for sure. My mother gave $25 for that milk cow. Sold enough milk off for her to pay for her. So we lived there about 2 years. In them days you could file on some property. And you allowed so many business lots and then so many other lots. So Dad filed on 7 lots straight south between 2nd and 3rd. We was on 3rd Street, right on the corner of 3rd Street. We had 7 lots there. That's where we built a house and built on up, built more onto it, and a dugout and that. And so Dad run the restaurant for Northrop is. So when they began to get cheap food, or it was cheap food, but when they began to sell it, these private people began to put out a meal for 25 cents, all they eat family style. Why, that's where they'd go. They didn't go to the restaurant. They'd give them a pound of round steak and potatoes and coffee and bread and butter for a quarter. Them days. So they began to put that family style out, so his business got so bad he just quit. We moved out on the farm. He finally rented a place 7 miles south of Woodward, 3/4 of a mile east on the creek. In I think it was 96, I believe it was. Then in 99, we moved out there on the farm. Couldn't get away. We lived out there. So, and I stayed at home, helped the folks, everything else, done the farming and picking up one thing and another, get a start. Of course, we had quite a little bunch of cattle at that time. And they bought a horse, and we bought another horse, and we bought a plow. We done our own farming then.
How big was your farm?
160 acres.
Did you plow with horses or mules? Did you plow with horses or mules?
Fourth.
No, did you plow with horses or mules?
Yeah, I had horses.
How many acres could you plow in one day?
Oh, I don't know. I never kept track of it. You plow around 2, maybe 3 acres a day.
Well, let's back up. Tell us about your school days here in Woodward before you moved to the farm.
Well, now when we come here in the spring of March, that fall, down at on 5th Street, a fellow named Shy had a store right across the street on the corner of 5th in Maine. About all there was down from there on up. There was a few, maybe 3, 4 other frame buildings in there between there and that store.
Mm-hmm.
And the government, there was kind of supply was kind of breaking up then. So they moved a building down there on the north side of 5th Street. 4th, it was on 4th, 5th Street there. There I went to school that winter. Then the next winter, I went up to what's called the old Opera House up on Main Street. I was scattered around for 2 or 3 years. I forgot now how many years it was. Finally, they built a 4-room schoolhouse where the city hall is. there to school until I moved out in the country. I see, I went there. I believe I was in the 6th grade when I left town. Went out in the country, moved out.
Did you enter school then after you got in the country? Did they have school out in the country?
Oh, yes, yes. I had just 3/4 mile to walk to school. The old schoolhouse, what is called the Indian Creek Schoolhouse, sat on the corner 7 miles south of Woodward. You know where the Indian Creek Bridge is out there?
Yes.
Well, it was just across the creek on the, it'd be the northeast corner of that quarter right there, where the schoolhouse is there. And they had a small one there. It was 16 by 18 then, and then when we moved out there, they made it twice that big. I think it's 34, 36 feet long and 16 or 18 feet wide. I can't remember anymore.
Well, who did you marry?
So I went to school down there until 1903. The district was, it was 2 by 4 by. I think it was 6 by 4 or something like that. The school district was.
Yes.
And it was 65 kids went to that school.
Yes.
One teacher.
Yes.
$25 a month.
Yes.
So then his folks, they had their golden wedding in '62 over in Germany. So Dad went over to Germany in '62. Well, he was sickly and had spells. Didn't know what the matter, but he'd have spells. You know, he just like that and raised right off the floor. He had a hold of it. So I went over there one day and I come home from school. He had one of them spells. 2 men was trying to hold him to get so the doctor could give him a shot. He just raised him off the floor. Well, in 1902, he went to Germany to his dad's golden wedding. His brother celebrated his silver wedding, and his daughter celebrated her engagement.
Well, quite a family affair.
All at once.
Yes.
So while he was there, he went to a doctor. And the doctor told him to shut his eyes. And he did, and I said, open them. He said, you got heart trouble. He stayed over there and doctored with him about a year. It wasn't quite a year. And he come home and he was all right. He never had another spell after that.
Well, great.
And that doctor told him, he said, you ever get sick, write to him and I'll send you some medicine. But he never did get sick after that.
Now, tell me about your wedding.
My wedding?
Mm-hmm.
Well, I was going with this girl and we decided we'd get married. Well, his dad, her dad, had just rebuilt a house. He bought one secondhand and then rebuilt it and fixed it up. And his wife was kind of ornery as his third wife. And so when it come time to have her wedding, we went down, cleaned the house all up, fixed it all up, and then she backed down on us. We couldn't have none. So I said, all right. I said, we're going to get married. So I went to work, went to Woodward, and I bought some lumber up there, and I built right on the south side of that house. That's 24 feet long. I built a dining room on there. So we went ahead and had our wedding, the 17th of March. Oh, well, God, I don't want to get mixed up.
19 and 17, wasn't it?
Yeah, 1917. 17th, wasn't it? No.
No. Yes, his wife Ruby, whom he married in 1917.
Yeah.
Yes, that was in 1917 when you got married.
Yeah.
Well, it says here that you had your wedding and then you tore that room down.
Yeah, just put it up temporary.
Uh-huh.
Just went down and I rented some lumber. You gotta get it for a little or nothing. And I built it on there. Put a bench full length of it. Made a table out of it. Of course, the window was on the south side. And the dining room, and then the kitchen was on the north side. So they went to work, and I built that in there. And I had a door on the east to go in to eat. So we had our dinner in there in that place there.
Yes. Now then, let's get back to the little cafe that your father had there, where he served a pound of steak. Did you ever have any gamblers or any outlaws to come in and?
No, he never had any.
You didn't have any outlaws or gamblers?
No.
Or drunk people drop in and cause you problems?
Oh, all the time someone traveling, stopping in to go someplace, get something to eat, maybe a cup of coffee or something like that.
Well, it says here in this little write-up, a gambler stopped who was about half lit, and he threatened to shoot the lights out in the restaurant. Do you remember that story?
Well, he was a gambler. And then Saloons was all open then, and they had gambling here. And so this fella come in one night, and he was kind of partly lit up. And he was sitting up on the counter, wasn't too busy. And he told my dad, he said, I had one of them rail lamps, he used to lay it up and down on a chain,
Yeah.
So he said, I'm going to shoot that light out. Dad said, just wait a minute. He says, you might accidentally take and shoot me. So he had a bread knife there, it's about that long, that he used to bake his bread. And of course, them days you had to slice your bread too that you bought. And it was about that wide. And he just reached down and got that, walked around there and slapped it down on the counter and told that fella, go ahead and shoot. Yeah, he looked at that knife, he looked at him. Finally, he just went ahead and ate. And that. And of course, Temple Houston was a pretty rough man them days.
Yes.
And he always used to come to my dad's and get a loaf of bread, and when the chili was in season, he'd buy them big red peppers, you know what they are?
Yes.
Hotter than a firecracker. But he'd always get some of them. And just about the time Dad laid the knife on the table, he stepped in. He seen that knife, he backed out and went home. He didn't want no blood or nothing. He comes in the next day to the door and opened up. He says to my dad, he says, well, is it kosher? Yeah, Dad says it's kosher. So Dad says, told Dad, he says, when I seen that knife, he says, the cold chill just run all over me. He said, I had to take out. He says, 6 shooters, he said, they didn't bother me, piled up as high as the house. But he said, that set me a-going.
Yes.
So this gambler, he come back the next day to my dad and wanted to know from him about what he'd have done. Well, Dad said, that's my business. And he said, whenever you get ready to leave town, he said, I'll tell you, not come back. Of course, they was closing the gambling joints out and everything else. So he come in one day and asked my dad. Well, and Dad said to me, he said, you wouldn't have had any more hand than a rabbit. He said, that's all there was to it. He said, I just cut that hand off so slick you wouldn't have known what happened. And he worried a long time over that deal before he couldn't sleep that night and that.
No. Well, tell us about the jailbreak.
Well, now then, there was two fellas that they had arrested, and they knowed something about the shirts and everything. They had a clue on them, had something on them shirts. So the old courthouse set where, you know, where the old courthouse sat. That's where the jail and the courthouse used to sit. And so they had fixed so they could break out. So they broke out and went across the river. And just across the river there used to be a story and a half house sitting on the west side in there. So they got out and run in there. And of course these sheriffs, they was always on the lookout for them, you know, expecting them to. So they got on their horses. And there was a livery barn right where the old post office was. And some named Wiggins, he run the undertaker shop, and he had his horses over there. So they got one of his horses, one of them did, got on it and went over there, and they shot and killed it. But they shot them two boys. And that's about all there was to that. They couldn't do nothing. Of course, you kill anybody, well, that's it. Them days, they never thought much about it.
Do you remember the Spanish-American War?
Who?
The Spanish-American War.
No. No, I don't know much about it.
Do you remember the sheriff's name?
I won't say for sure, but I think his name was Ben Wolf was his name. And I forgot now what the other one's name was.
When you first came here in '94, were there saloons in Woodward?
Huh?
Were there saloons here in town?
Any what?
Saloons.
Yeah, about every other door.
Who ran the saloons?
There's a saloon about it in every block. Some of them had two. All over town. Started clear down there at the depot and all night.
Did they have a place called Devil's Half Acre?
That was Half Acre.
Yeah.
Now, it kind of seemed like they did call it, but I swear I wouldn't answer that, because I don't remember.
Tell us about the Depression days here in Woodward, that when all the banks went broke, and how did it affect your father and you?
Well, of course, it was awful tough time. Of course, my mother, she had a little money in the bank when she went broke. There's one, well.
Did she lose it all?
Yeah, what she had. Wasn't very much. I just forgot now what she had anymore in the bank. But there used to be a bank in there where that, well, the first bank was started was on the corner where that, I think it's 9th Street.
Where Get Singers are?
Yeah.
Yes, there was a bank there.
Yeah, it's Gurlak and Hopkins Bank.
Yes.
And of course they had the store in there. They had a store where Bogton's grocery store is. They had a store there. In later years, they moved out half of it, put a brick in there. Then they moved out the other half and put in a brick. Then they built what's called the penny store now. They built it. Well, they done so much credit that they went broke. They didn't go clear broke, but just good as broke. Bank and all.
Yes.
Let's see who took that.
Well, you folks would be out on the farm by this time, wouldn't you?
Oh, yes, we moved out on the farm in '99. This was all going on after we moved to town, after we moved out on the farm.
In some ways, the farmers were lucky being on a farm during the 29 and 30 depression.
Yes, we was as far as that goes. Well, you could get a little work along to get by in them days. There's always something popping up that you get a little work.
Well, you could always raise a good garden.
Yes, you could raise a garden then and everything.
And you could raise your meat.
Yeah, oh
And you
yeah.
had your chickens and eggs
Yeah.
and
Oh, yeah.
milk.
Yeah, milk.
Now, can you,
I forgot now what year it was they began to sell cream. But I forgot now what year that was they manufactured cream separators. So the folks bought a cream separator, and then we'd sell the cream, we'd buy our groceries that
yes,
way. And of course we'd have a cow or two or maybe something like that. Oh, too many while we sell down 2 or 3 days.
then after that, when the dirt storm started, how did the dirt storm days affect you and your dad?
That had already started when we come here.
Yes, I know.
Every March, why you could figure on
I remember that.
them old dust storms coming up.
Every March, my mother would not clean the house until after that first dust storm, and that ended it for the year.
Well, when March come around, you could figure on 30 days of wind.
Yes. And at least one big dirt storm. And
Yeah.
sand.
Several of them.
Yes.
But
Yeah.
when you're every day, that old sand boy, it just touch your face.
Yeah, tell us about the dust storms.
How
How bad were those dust storms?
bet you.
How bad?
how
How
bad?
bad were they dust storms?
Well, that wind would get up and blow 34 to 45 miles an hour, maybe a little more, or something like that. I don't know. We never pay no attention to it. Never.
Did it blow your fields badly?
Well, no, not particularly. We had more or less it was rain then, and it was loud, but then once in a while it'd get to where it blows some.
How far out from Woodward were your farms?
We lived 7 miles south and 3/4 mile
probably got more rain there than they did further west.
Well, it was pretty general for years.
Uh-huh. Do you remember the Black Sunday?
Black Sunday.
Uh-huh.
I don't remember hearing anything about it.
Well,
What about the tornado with 47?
47?
Yeah.
Well, I had a daughter working in the telephone office. And that night, we was out on the farm. My mother said there was an awful storm we're going through. Of course, it missed us about 2 miles. But that started down in Texas.
yes.
Comes clear through the woods. And that's what, about around 10 or 11 o'clock that night when it broke up. I had a brother in that storm. He lived up there in the west end of town up there about, let's see,
He would be in the path of the storm then, wouldn't he?
he was right into it.
Did he lose his property?
He had it rented.
Oh,
Well, it didn't do too much. It tore his house up pretty bad, and it smashed his car up a little bit. But they was all full of splinters when it got done.
yes.
He grabbed his wife and a little girl. He had a little girl, and he got her right between them. They took them up in the airways and dumped them down. Didn't hurt the girl in it, but they was all full of splinters and everything else. So they found out my folks were living right straight down here on 3rd Street. Yeah, 3rd Street at the time. And she was telling about there's anybody else come to bring them in. They was bringing them in and yelling all over town about that time why they fetched him down there. Well, they took his wife to Oklahoma City. She was all full of splinters. Had to pick them out. I don't know. She was down there about 3 or 4 days. He was boogered up a little bit, skinned up. Had a few splinters into him to take out.
They were lucky.
Well, there wasn't nothing left that in town. I bet it was good.
Well, no, they came out of the tornado though rather lucky with their lives.
Oh yeah. I got a cousin. She was in that war. She's still alive yet.
She is.
But she can't do nothing. She just got the leg.
Well,
That's too bad that she didn't play.
did you come in town and help with the injured?
No, I didn't come in this long towards along the night. My daughter was working for the telephone company, and she drove all over town, helping some, and picked up a daughter that belonged to my son-in-law. His aunt that she picked up, took down to her where she was at an apartment. Took her down there and drove all over town. Funny thing about it, she never got a puncture or nothing else. Drove all over town everything.
Well,
But I don't remember. I think there was 300 got hurt. I believe it was. I don't remember how many was killed.
yes.
It didn't come down that far. It come down to, let's see, where was it? Come through the west end, and I think it come down as far as the Bank of Woodward is. I believe that's where the far down there has really done any damage. It's done little damage down there.
Mhm.
But the rest of the town up that way was all pretty well wiped out. And it broke up there on Main Street, or past Main Street.
What about the Depression of 1907? You remember that one?
The panic then?
Yeah.
Well, I don't. We, of course, it didn't bother us too much because we had our own stuff to eat and everything like that. Some people it did. Of course, you could get a little work to do now and then at work, get by. Of course, a lot of people, everybody was living on land then, working in town. It was tough.
What kind of crops did you raise in the farm?
Huh?
What kind of crops did you raise in the farm?
What I raised on the farm?
Yeah.
Oh, well, we raised a lot of garden stuff, mostly garden stuff. Corn, calf corn stuff, feed the cattle. We had our own meat, hog, cattle.
Can you?
And everybody was sociable in them days. Where you was a neighbor. That's all there was to it. You needed help. You went over and helped him. You needed help. He comes to help you. Or you got sick. You'd go over and help him do his chores and everything else till he got all right. And that way it went on for a good many years that way. We had where the schoolhouse sat, was down there on the corner of 7 Mile Corner, just across the Indian Creek Bridge. 1903, they moved it over a mile east and 3/4 of a mile south because the district was too big, and they had to make 2 districts out of it. And they were just paying them teachers $25. Imagine one teacher teaching 65 kids.
How has farming methods changed?
Huh?
How has farming methods changed?
Exchange?
No, how have they changed?
Oh, well, when fall come, maybe he'd cut his feet first, you go help him rake it and sharp it, stuff like that. Or take the calf corn in the fall, and you got sick, why the neighbors would go in and help head that, or of course the broom corn pulling, they had a lot of room going them days. Of course they hired that done. Ordinarily I worked for 50 cents a day for a good many years till I was 16. Then I went to working with I had a fellow who bought header then. They come out. I went over and harvest. He had 400 acres of wheat he had to cut. And they bought a binder, one of them new binders that come out there, 10-foot cut. Sharking wheat behind it. Me and another fellow. Of course, we didn't have to work hard to shark it. So when we got done all that, I went to work then. He bought a threshing machine, a steam powered threshing machine. So I went right on to the threshing machine. Thought I was rich. I was getting $1.50 a day.
How many men in a harvest crew?
Well, there was 7 pictures on that separator on the threshing machine. And then there's there on a crew, on a header, there was 2 barges, and one fellow stacked wheat, that fall line. As I went out after harvest, I started in with them. We slept outdoors, and he got that thrash machine. He run a cook shack. Along about 12 o'clock, and come up a doggone old rain. Then we had to get in out of the rain, get in an old wheat bin, half full of wheat, red hot. Or maybe sometimes we'd find a halfway decent barn or something to crawl into, anything to get to it. Well, about 9 o'clock, we'd go to thrashing again. Sun would come up just as bright and pretty as anything, wind would blow a little. We'd go to thrashing, thrash there. I thrashed up till August. We thrashed. That fellow was over east a mile, 5 miles east of me, and he took it and zigzagged back and forth, come over there through me there, and then he went on to the 11 miles south on 8th Street there. Then he come back, thrashed on back, we crossed the creek. You know where this here drive-in park is out here? Well, we crossed the creek right in there and got up there on that fellow lived right there. Johnson was his name. He lived just up on that hill right there. We got 11-inch rain, 3-inch rain that night. So that settled the thrashing. It is in August. Broom corn pulling come on. So I went to pulling broom corn. So he shut down, placed wheat out, and then he thrashed calf corn, called calf corn, maize and stuff, wheat as he went. From that on, he got all thrashed up.
How do you pull broom corn?
How do you pull broom corn?
Yeah.
Well, it grows up in a stalk, and it comes out there, and there's a brush there. Down here, there's a leaf that comes out on the side of it. You grab that leaf, and that stalk gives a jerk like that, and it breaks off with a joint right there. And when you get a handful of that way and lay it down, we put 4 rows to a file. Get a handful, and then you go down through there, and then come on back. And finally, some fellow made what they call hand cedars. Took a big block of wood and put in spikes and stuff, and sharpened them like. Then they rigged up a horsepower to run it, and the 2 fellows carrying the fella run the cedar. It was covered over, only just room enough to run your hand in there to protect you, you know. And you just slap that push through there like that, and that knocked that seed off of it. You drop it in the back box. Then they had a big, what's called a baler there. It was about, I think it was 3 foot by 4, or maybe it was a little more than that. Your corn was left. The way you put it in there, you put an arm load over here, an arm load over here, with the stems out, and then you get about 300 to 400 pounds in that old baler. And then you put the lid on top of it, and then you'd extend that far enough. You put a ring onto it, and then you pull that down there, and then you hook it fast, and then that's the way you tighten it. You tighten it up real tight. And then you had a hook there that you run through in the crack to get your wire. Run it around that baler and wire it to your baler, to your bale. You don't know anything about the buildings or anything else?
Yeah.
Well, you know where that Presbyterian church is now down there? Or Episcopalian church?
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Well, you know where Fenimore store is? sitting right out east in the middle of the street.
Yes.
When they moved that up there and put that story in there, they put it in there wrong, because that's where they moved that church from out, I think it was Supply,
Yes.
down there. It sat there about 2 years or more.
Yes.
Then they moved it up there to where it's at now.
Yes. How did they move it from Supply? Do you remember?
Oh, they loaded them, they had regular skids.
Oh, they did.
Yeah, they jack it up, skids on them, and take so they had, some of them had, there were big old heavy wooden wheels made, you know, and then they made a wagon out of it, and that put it right up on top of that.
Yeah.
And them loads was all 12 by 12, or 12 by 14.
Well, isn't that church where Custer worshiped up there at Fort Supply? Did he worship in that church?
If he did, I don't remember or hear anything about it.
Remember when they closed Fort Supply, the Army?
Well, no, not exactly. I don't remember what year that was when they kind of closed that up.
I think they closed it in '94, didn't they?
But they used it for asylum now.
Yeah. There's an Army post up until I think '94.
Yeah, well, of course, you know, kids don't pay too much attention to something like that.
I
you
know it.
Older he gets,
I know it.
Yeah.
and you don't get talked about things like that, you forget a lot of stuff.
Yeah, that's right.
Tell me about going to school.
Huh?
Tell me about going to school.
Oh, going to school?
Yeah.
Well, first winter I went to school, I went down on that corner. It's quite an incident. When I went to school to Woodward, it was what we call a peg leg. He got his foot cut off, and he limped on it. They had a pair of shoe made for that, and he went to school there. I think it's 2 winters. Then he disappeared, and I never heard anything of him, never knowed where he went to or nothing else. Well, 99, when we moved out on the farm, who was my teacher was him.
Oh. Well, I'll bet he was a good teacher.
And so he had 45 kids to teach, from the first grade on up. So me and a friend of mine, he'd been living in Missouri, and they filed on that quarter where the schoolyard was. He was living up there, and there was a couple of bully kids that jumped on us because we were town kids.
Yeah.
So we had to clean them up, and then after that, well, everything went smooth.
How many kids were in your school?
Well, we had 45 that one year.
And how many grades?
From the first up to the 8th,
One teacher?
one teacher.
How did one teacher teach all 8 grades?
About 10, 15 minutes to class.
What would you do with the other grades while she taught one?
Huh?
What would you do with the other 7 grades while she was teaching one?
Well, we had regular desks just like we got now. You had your books in there, and then she had a certain time. She'd call them classes, just like,
Up to the recitation seat, huh?
yeah.
They had a long bench in the classroom.
No, we had regular school desks.
I know, but when you recited your,
Oh yeah, in front. We'd have to go up in front.
go up and sit on this long bench.
Yeah. And then he'd ask us questions,
Yes.
so on.
Did you have any spelling matches
Well, some.
or ciphering matches?
Yeah,
Do you
we
remember
had,
them?
We had ciphering matches them
Yeah.
days, quite a bit.
Was it just among the school children, or was
Yeah.
it between 2 schools?
No, it was
Just among the...
each every Friday each school would have their own.
Yeah.
We'd have our own siren.
That was a sort of a relaxation, wasn't it,
Yeah.
for the children?
Yeah.
From recess till 4 o'clock.
Yeah.
Did you have any pie suppers?
Well, when we first moved out there, of course, we had them cipher matches. We had literary on Friday.
Yes.
Then they wanted to raise a little money to buy an organ. So they went to work, and each one in the district made a quilt. Or they made a quilt.
Made a pie, didn't they?
Well, I don't know.
And sold the pies.
I think they put the name on one quilt, believe it or
Oh,
not. And then they sold the quilt. First quilt, when they put that up, I think it fetched $15 or something like that. That's when I turned around and sold it again and fetched $11.
Well,
So we got an organ that cost, them days organ, we could get an organ for $25. So we soon had an organ in the schoolhouse.
well, that was good.
So we have literary out there and have programs every Friday night and everything, speaking going on and that.
Well, didn't the adults take part in the program?
Oh yes, the old folks, they took part in the literary and debated and stuff like that. And we had Sunday school down there every Sunday. And after we'd moved the schoolhouse over on that other place there, why, every once in a while, when somebody go to town and there was a Methodist preacher, he'd come out and we'd stay all night with us, and then he'd preach on Sunday mornings and Sunday evening, and then they'd bring him back to town. We had Sunday school every Sunday in regular clockwork, and we had dances out there. Nobody ever said anything about dances or kicking in the dances or anything else. We had nice dances. The girls them days, if you got to drinking, why, it's too bad. You never got to dance. That's it. That's one reason why the girls had gumption enough to not dance with you when you got a little booze. So we had nice dances, we had parties and everything else. Summertime we'd get together on Saturday nights. Somebody go to town Saturday, bring out a 300-pound cake of ice, and everybody that had freezers, why they'd get their milk ready and freeze their milk, ice cream, bring them over and we'd freeze it and I'd eat ice cream.
That homemade ice cream was good, wasn't
Oh,
it?
don't talk about it.
Don't talk about it.
Yeah.
I get hungry for homemade ice cream.
Oh boy. Well, we had that through the summertime.
Well, you know, so many people wonders what farm people do for entertainment.
Yeah.
Now, you've just told us,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
it was good.
It was good.
Yeah.
And anybody was sick, needed help. Well, we went and helped, that's
Sure.
all.
Sure.
If they was out of wood, why, we'd try and get them some wood, or if they was out of coal, we'd go down and get coal. Set up with them one night, and Capricorn cutting time come, we'd go cut their Capricorn
Yes.
and all that.
Yes.
We had to meet a fella going down the road. If I was going to town, I met you along the road, we sat there and talked to you an hour,
Yes.
and go on town, get her groceries, and come home.
Yes.
Nowadays, they ain't got time to, they don't even raise your arm at you, hardly.
What about barn raisins?
Huh?
About barn raisins? You help build the neighbors' barns?
Well, most of them, the carpenters done most of that, barn building and stuff like that. while they build on
Yes.
sheds and barns and stuff.
Yes.
Chickens we had our own eggs, 10 cents a dozen for the town.
That's
5 pound coffee for 10 cents. 3 pounds of sugar for a quarter.
Yes.
Corn 10 cents a can. Peas, all that kind of stuff.
And 5 sticks of gum for a nickel.
Yeah, yeah. You got a pretty good sized bag of candy for a nickel.
Yes. You could buy more in those days for the money that you had than you can today with these big high
Oh,
wages.
yes. Oh, you got a pretty good sized bag of candy for a nickel.
Yes. You could buy more in those days for the money that you had than you can today with these big high
Oh,
wages.
yes. Oh, sure you could. Yeah. You take sugar. Sugar, you can buy sugar. $3 a hundred. Sack of sugar. Flour was 50-pound sack of flour was 70 cents, 50 cents, and all that kind of stuff like that you get. Work for 50 cents a day. Buy a shirt like that. It lasts you 6 months. You get home with it anyway.
Yeah.
Nowadays you do well if you get home with them. A pair of overalls would run you 3-4 months. You can buy a good pair of shoes for $2.50.
Did you ever have any big storms in the winter time, blizzards and things like that?
Blizzards?
Mm-hmm.
Oh yeah. Yeah, we had a few. We had one started on Thursday night. Snowed all night, Thursday night, Saturday and Sunday. It quit Saturday. Well, of course, the farmers was out of something to eat.
Yes.
Because they always went to town on Saturday to get their groceries.
Yes.
But I don't know my mother, I don't know how she managed it, but she always managed to have enough stuff on hand. She gets so low while she buys some more.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the way we got along. Other people, they run out, they had to grind calf corn needed
Oh.
for flour.
Yes.
Boy, that's a bitter taste. If they didn't raise any corn, well, they had to grind that up.
Well.
And it was a week or more before they got to town.
Mm-hmm.
Of course, my neighbors right west of me, they went in on that road. They took 4 horses. The snow was just actual deep, that deep. And then they get a drift, and a drift, they kind of shoveled through them drifts. But we were lucky enough that they was a freight from Tolovia at that time to Woodward. And then they come up there and went into Mutual and stayed all night at Mutual, and then from Mutual they cornered up, and there was a store there called Detroit. And they'd make it up to that store, and then they come across to the corner on the east corner of our place, and go straight into town here on past out there where the lake is.
Yeah.
But when they got right out here to where the golf course is, well, they could cut across and come on into town.
Mm-hmm.
There wasn't nobody living there or nothing then. Of course, there's nobody to plow there, but didn't pay no attention to that. Just cut across there and that, and come to town and get their groceries and stuff. Yeah, all them blizzards, that there was about 3 foot deep. So them fellas, in about 3 days, they was coming up from Buffalo. I mean, from Mutual down there, they got stuck down there. There was 3 days down there. Well, then they come on up. They broke the road then for us to go on into town. Me and my neighbor, he was about out of stuff. And I didn't have no wagon. I had a sled made out of 6-inch runners. For feed and everything like that on them. So I happened to get a hold of an old buggy tongue. So I rigged it up, put the 2 horses onto it, and I went on by my neighbor. He was over half a mile east of me there, so I went over there and picked him up. Down the road we went to the store. So we got our sugar and a little coffee and stuff and tied us on through. He was out of flour and stuff, so we got enough stuff, and then they got that road broke. Well, then we got to town. Oh yeah, every once in a while we'd have a snowstorm, something like that. We had one in the spring. I forgot now what spring it was when my kids was going to school in Sharon. And it snowed and blowed and blizzard and everything else. My wife, she was, that was during the Depression part of it. My wife, she worked in town at the courthouse indexing. And my mother, she was running that there rooming house there on the corner right east of the Methodist Church. So my daughter stayed and my wife stayed up there, and of course I bachelor all week and that. She'd go up there and index them. So when they had that storm, she called Sharon, told them not to send their kids out. They couldn't make it. They said they tried it, but they couldn't make it. She said, you leave my kids at a certain place. We had some relation down there. And of course, we had, I think there's 25 or 30 kids in that truck. So they left them all in the Sharon, but the relations didn't take them while the teachers took care of them.
Yes.
Of course, they went on, they had teaching school, till the roads got broke, and then they went with them trucks around. Deliver them again. Yeah, ripped up the side of the fence.
Oh. Did you lose any cattle?
No. Some people lost some.
But you didn't. They call those the good old days.
Yeah.
Do you want to go back to them?
Yes, I do.
You do?
I enjoyed them old days. I'm telling you right now.
I enjoyed them too, but I don't want to go back to them.
Yes, and them was good old days. Everybody knowed each other, and you need a little help, you got a little help, and there's always this or that, why it didn't make any difference.
And there never was a door locked
Well,
in the country.
I don't know about the stores being locked.
Well, I mean in the country, the homes.
No,
No.
no.
Can you tell me about your early Christmases?
Well, now them days, of course, my folks always did fix up a Christmas tree and that. But every Christmas, we had a Christmas tree at the schoolhouse. And we'd have programs and stuff. And we'd take up a little collection and buy some apples. And we'd pass the apples around. A little sack of candy, we'd get up. Collection. Of course, you could buy candy for 8, 10 cents a pound. Apples were around $1 a bushel or something like that. And then certain time after that, we'd have regular programs and stuff. And when these programs were over, then they'd pass the apples and candy around. So each kid got a little sack of candy and an apple, and any strangers there, they got apples.
And Santa Claus always came.
Yeah, oh yeah, yes, we had Santa Claus. Couldn't get along without Santa Claus. Yeah, the kids would sure get excited over that.
Well, did they have evergreen trees growing where you
yeah.
could get you a nice evergreen
Oh
tree?
yeah, they were evergreen trees. Of course, they shipped in a lot of them, sold them.
Yeah.
There wasn't too many here that you could get, but they shipped them in and sold them for $1 a piece. For a big trucker, you know.
Anything else?
You know, in those days, we didn't have to have too expensive gifts.
No.
Most of them was homemade, handmade. The mothers.
Yeah, homemade, or we get a new pair of socks or something new, why that was all that was necessary. We didn't
Yeah.
force no fight over anything.
Did you hang your stockings up?
Oh yeah,
Uh-huh.
of course the folks they always had a Christmas tree,
Yeah.
decorated it all up. Of course some days we had Sunday school and everything. And lots of times the whole Sunday school go home someplace for dinner.
Yes.
Didn't make any difference what you had to eat, but it was just beans, why we had beans and that. We visited, and when time come to go home, go to the church, well, we go home.
Yes.
And that was a good old days.
And nobody told when they were going to come to see you. They just went.
Yeah, everybody come in and visit you most anytime.
Uh-huh.
Somebody drop in on you, you never know.
And the wife could always fix up a good meal.
Oh yeah, we always had plenty to eat.
Yes.
Of course, after some people took a little while for them to get their footings, you know, to get something to eat. So on the farm there, they raise their pigs and then they get their wheat and stuff. It was all right then.
You know, really, I think during the Depression and the early days, I think the people on the farms fared much better than the ones in town, depending on jobs.
Well, I work for 50 cents a day. I think I did work for a quarter once.
Well,
Of course, wages in town wasn't very much. $2 or $3 a week is all you got in town.
yes.
The wages of working at the store or different places.
Yes. But the farmer had their eats.
Oh yeah, we
They
really
always,
grow
yes.
garden and potatoes and stuff like that.
And the women would can.
Oh, canned stuff, yeah. I had my hands in there.
You had, you helped on that.
Oh yes, it didn't make any difference when folks come. I had to help had to help mother can.
Yes,
And they had them old cans, you know, quart can.
yes,
The lid fits on there and take sealing wax,
yes.
pour it around on there, yeah.
My mother used to say the syrup pails.
Yeah, fun they actually got the syrup out.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, I helped my mom lots and lots and lots.
Did you have a big orchard?
Well, we didn't have too big an orchard the first year. We set out an orchard out there. We had seedling peaches. Then we bought some nursery stuff. We had apples, and pears, and plums, and cherries. And we had grapes that we put out. We had dewberries, all that stuff to eat.
Mm-hmm.
Good plum, lots of jelly. We eat lots of jelly there.
Yes.
Good old jelly.
Homemade bread,
Oh boy, that
homemade butter,
I made homemade bread.
and homemade jelly.
But
You're making me hungry.
I made my own bread.
Can you think of anything else you need to tell us?
Well, I don't know what you want to know. Just as I told you, I'm trying to tell you. Of course, the Woodward Road, why, of course, that's the way it went. The Central Hotel, what's called Central Hotel, was right across the street there from Gutzner's. There was the hotel, Central Hotel. And they finally moved it. The post office was up there on 11th Street, straight south of where the old post office. It was a frame building, and a fellow named Billy Bolton was his name. He run the Woodward News
Yeah.
paper,
Mm-hmm.
and the post office was in there too.
Yeah.
And they finally built that across the street there. No, they didn't right away. They built that frame there on the corner where Gutsinger and them did too. The post office was in there for a good many years. Smith was the one that run that, Mrs. Smith. His dad and the boy, they was lawyers. And they were lawyers, and she run the post office, and for years and years, then they finally quit, and they built that new one, that in there, where it's the old one. And so it moved uptown. And where that States Hotel was, where they had that building and that newspaper and all that. Behind that was the jail. They had the jail back there and everything. And they finally built a new courthouse, built there. Of course, a fellow named York Key, he had a store, very good store, grocery store combined, on the corner there where the bank is, that Central Exchange Bank. And he had a lumberyard behind there. And he would seem to be, he wasn't married, and he wanted Woodward to buy some property out of ways. I don't know how much. And he was going to build a park out there for him. No, Woodward fought against that. They didn't want nothing like that, or anything else like that. Why, they didn't want it. They didn't want it. So he finally then he sold out and went down into Texas. I just forgotten how where it was. He got down. They built a park down there, and he furnished to fix the park all up. And had money enough to run that park for years.
Yeah.
And that's the way Woodward was.
Yes. Can you remember the pioneers coming in from the east with their wagons and teams and stopping here and?
Well, used to remember every once in a while somebody
Going through
or electrical worker going to stay here.
Do you remember
On the farm
do you remember how many wagons there might be in one day's time that would go through?
No. Sometimes there'd be 2, 3 of them together.
They didn't just flock in here then? They didn't flock in here?
No, No, they didn't come in here too bad. When we was down here, of course they kept increasing and coming in and plowing on land. It was every piece of land at one time was plowed on in Woodward here. And one mistake, of course, we was pretty hard run, and a fellow come through here, and he took a picture of every homestead in the county. The house and that, and he had the description of the land and everything else on it. But I forgot now how much it was anymore, $4 or $5, something like that was that book. It was about that big, square, and it was about that thick. The folks didn't buy none. There were several of them bought them around there, and I can't get them located. So my daughter was one day up there in the library, and she happened to run onto an old one that was partly tore up from that. But there was a lot of it in there. There was a lot of enough in there. And I asked around, and I couldn't find nobody that had one. I wanted to get one and get a copy of it made. But it had every schoolhouse, every house on every residence, dugout or whatever it was, why it was there.
Well,
And, yeah, it was an awful big book, and an awful nice book, storybook and stuff.
well, I've heard that there was a red light district in Woodward one time.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was also.
That's all true, huh?
Yeah, it used to be down there on between 10th and 11th Street, just north of the tracks there a ways. And when they had all the saloons and everything else began closing them up, they closed them up too.
Yeah.
And of course, lots of them women, they married men here in Woodward. So named Jeff Warren married one of them. He was a fiddler. He owned fiddle down there at their dances down there. Another couple north of Woodward. They got married. There was about 3 or 4 or 5 of them that got married and lived here for several years.
Well, I heard that the lady that was running the place got her 160 acres out south and west of Woodward, and she was killed in the tornado. Do you know anything about that?
Well, now, I won't say anything about that because I don't remember her name or anything else. I didn't know who run that or anything.
Well, I can't think of anything more to ask you. Can you think of any more to tell us?
Well, of course, the building part of it is now. So named Shy was down there. He had a little old store. He filed on this 80 acres down here on the east end of town. It's 80 acres down here. And he run a little dairy and one thing and another, and at the store. And finally he quit the store. And then from there on they was building on up the store. And then they finally put in their brick buildings and stuff like that. The First National Bank, they put in there, and then over there were I can't call this here new land abstract and whatever it is in that white. building in there. A fellow named Jack Garvey run that. He had a saloon in there. And then he finally quit and put in went into put a bank in there, him and another fellow. And they went broke. Well, they didn't exactly went broke. A fellow named running the bank here in Woodward now. Got a farm out north of town there. Well, anyhow, there was two brothers of them. Of course, one of them, he started that Ford agency here in town. I can't call his name. I don't know what. And his dad had an interest in the Fourth National Bank in Wichita. So when this bank went broke, why, he bought it out and started this bank here, the Bank of Woodward. There was a bank down there where Fenimore started. He started a bank down there and he went broke. Well, a fellow named Peter Morrison and Brockhouse was about right in there, right where the old Tasco store is. And there he had a implement business. Morrison, he had a kind of a dry goods store and everything. So he had an interest in the Bank of Woodward, the First National Bank. A fellow named Stein, when he come here, he was the ice man and beer man. And sold beer and delivered beer all over town. And they had a bank down there in Mitchell at that time, and Morrison had a share into it. Stein, he wanted to just pay so much on it. Morrison wouldn't do it. He paid, I think they paid 50% of it at that time. And then finally old Stein, he went broke on account of he bought a lot of bonds these days. And bonds dropped, government bonds dropped, well that threw him in the hole. So he went broke. Put that shoe store in there, where it's at.
How bad was that flu epidemic of 1918? The flu epidemic of 1918?
Yeah, I don't know about that.
Tell me about it.
I had it too. Oh, I sure had it. We was living about 15 miles south east of Wood. That time my rental place down there and moved down there. About a sick human, I sure was. My brother, he was sick too. And I was married then too, and I had that flu epidemic around.
How many people died during that epidemic?
I don't remember. I know there's quite a lot of them died. Same way when they had that sleep disease through here. They had a sleep disease through here, and quite a lot of them died. And there's one young fellow that I kind of remember of. He was 17. He had it. He had it over bad. The doctors give him up. There's a fellow named Dr. Durth was his name. He was a chiropractor. And they finally called him. He went down there and fetched him out of it. Of course, when he come out, he was short. One foot was kind of short. I don't know whether it's because of that or what. So then he learned, that boy, to be a chiropractor. So then he went down here in a town or two west here and started up down there as a chiropractor. his dearth, he was here until he died. He sure was a doctor, I'll tell you right now.
Do you remember the boy's name?
What?
Do you remember the boy's name?
No, I don't. I just forgot.
What year was that? Do you remember?
Hey, you got me. You know, it's the hardest thing for me to remember years and stuff like that.
Yes, I know.
And
I'm that way too.
kids some days, they didn't think about what year or this
No.
happened or that happened. When they drifted out of their mind and what was going on. Yeah.
Well, I can't think of anything more than you. You think you've talked long enough? You getting tired?
No, I hadn't thought anything about it. Got any more questions you think you know?
What kind of people came here to settle Woodward? What quality of people?
I declare, I'm getting a little hard to hear.
What kind of people, where do they come from that came here and settled Woodward?
Oh, they come from all around Colorado, Denver, and Nebraska, and Missouri, and South, and all over in here. They come from all over in here.
Most of them were good people, weren't they?
Oh, yes, they were good people. Yeah.
They was just hard luck.
Yeah. There wasn't much stealing going on or anything, of course. We had one neighbor there where we was living. He stole chickens and stuff like that. And we had chickens too. He'd get out there and he'd call and feed and call and call. And he'd get them over there and then he'd send them over there to turn them out. He had turkeys and guineas and ducks and geese and peacocks and I don't know what all they didn't have. But he got into it. There's a woman that lived up there on 5th Street. Mrs. Brazen was her name. Now I won't say for sure whether it's the same Brazen that that's her son. There wasn't much stealing going on or anything, of course. We had one neighbor there where we was living. He stole chickens, stuff like that. And we had chickens too. He'd get out there and he'd call and feed and call and call. And then he'd get them over there and then he'd send them over there to turn them out. He had turkeys and guineas and ducks and geese and peacocks and I don't know what all they didn't have. But he got into it. There's a woman that lived up there on 5th Street. Mrs. Brazen was her name. Now I won't say for sure whether it's the same Brazen that that's her son that is running that Brazen TV outfit up there or not. But she was a dressmaker. This fella come home one night. She was right there on Main Street. He stopped in there and began to nose around a little bit, eavesdrop, watching her own dress and everything. And she seen him give a yell and he went on. So the next night she told the sheriff about it. So the next night they told her to go ahead and do just like she'd been doing. So the next night, he come back there. So they caught him, sent him over the road for 25 years. he was living down there. I don't know who's living there now. It's a white, kind of a white square house he had in there. He had about half of that block, you know, for his chickens.
Was that the same man that was, had so many chickens?
Yes, he had a whole yard full of chickens.
Yeah.
He loved chickens, you know. I remember one night, we had a big old Newfoundland dog. Dad kept him tied all the time on a very big old chain. He had a bulldog. He always tried to get this bulldog to fight this dog for us. So Dad happened to be home one day and they got into it. So this old bulldog got all he wanted. This old big Newfoundland dog, you know, with big hair, you know, long hair, you know. Finally got this bulldog down and about choked him to death. This fellow Smith was his name. He wanted to take him off. Well, Dad said, you leave them dogs alone until they got all they want. And finally, the black dog turned loose. That old bulldog, he went off. And whenever he come by that way, he'd always growl, but he never did come in to fight it. One night, when we moved over south there, the next block south of there, we had a barn and chicken house, and a hog pen, and one thing and another there. And one night, that dog, he just raised the roof off of the house. So Dad went out and looking around. He never did catch this guy. So finally, he made up his mind that when he was back there, he slipped into the toilet. Dad never looked in the toilet. He worked all around there in the world about half an hour and that and come back to the house. And afterwards, he figured that out. That's where he was at. He was going to get chickens and stuff there. And that old dog lays and lays and lays. So when he comes out, he went on home and that dog quieted down. Yeah. So we didn't have any guineas. So the guinea had a nest over there, right on the first street there, a little west of the street there. There's a ditch, you know, the city's got a ditch that runs down there. You used to drain that water down through there when it rained. So the guinea had a nest in there. So when she hatched, well, I heard she come with about 12, 15 guineas, so we got a guinea store. We had ducks for a long time. And we moved out on the farm, we had guineas out there. Boy, I'm telling them the best Westdogs we got.
Yes, they are.
Yeah,
They let you know if anything's
bet they
strange.
do. They sure do.
Well, I believe we better call this session to a close, don't you?
Yeah, it's pretty good.
It's been very interesting. Your talk has been very interesting.
Yeah,
We've enjoyed it.
yeah.
Thank you.
You're welcome.